Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast. It is a Monday edition of the show, but unfortunately for the second week in a row, it is not a Victory Monday. But that's not going to stop us from having the greatest podcast of all time as we recap the Bucs and Chiefs Sunday night game where the Bucs lost 41-31, and we obviously have a lot of questions about the Buccaneers defense. I'm your host, Matt Matera. Joining with me is the face of PewterReport.com, Scott Reynolds. Scott, how are you doing on this Monday afternoon? Have you digested everything that we saw from Sunday night's game, and how you feeling a couple hours later after a Bucs, maybe not a debacle, but certainly issues?
Well, certainly a little tired. I mean, it was a late game, and JC and I think we did a podcast around 1:30, something like that. So it was a little late from that standpoint, but I'm not as deterred and deflated today as I was last night after the game, and I think part of the reason for that is because I do think the hurricane did have something to do with this team's preparation. Not so much the game planning, but more so the rest and recovery. I've talked to a couple players that just said it just was a fast week, right? It was a tumultuous week. As JC and I talked about it last night on the podcast, and I'll just for a quick second kind of go over this again for those that didn't tune in. I live in Wesley Chapel. JC lives in Lutz. You live in Tampa. You relocated, right, for the storm. You went to the East Coast. But were you worried about what was happening in Tampa, right? You were.
I was very concerned, not just for my own place, but people around me and everything of that nature. So absolutely.
Exactly. And so you have that worry, that kind of sense of dread. You're watching the news. You're distracted. And Matt, what do we do for a living, right? We write stories. We do podcasts. We cover the Buccaneers for a living. We were on some Zoom calls with Todd Bowles and some of the players this week. We weren't preparing for not mortal combat, but hand-to-hand combat, trench warfare, if you will, right? Yeah. We weren't prepared for as what football really is. It's a car crash every Sunday, right, for your body. Just ask Cam Brate, who's in the concussion protocol after he collided, unfortunately, with Chris Godwin. Todd Bowles talked about that. We'll get into that in a second. But I just think that from a rest and recovery standpoint, and Rakeem Nunez-Roches, one of our go-to guys, friend of the podcast, he said, and it took a little bit of me coaxing this answer out of him because he didn't want to use it as an excuse. He said, listen, at the end of the day, we had to show up and play. We're happy the game was in Tampa as opposed to being elsewhere, but I was still trying to recover and get over the Packers game at kickoff of this game. And I think there's something to that. It's rest and recovery is a vital part of football players being prepared and ready to go. And collectively as a team, they didn't really have the opportunity. It's one thing to have a house, and if you're a football player, you probably have a big house, right? To spend with your wife, and you got your kids, in the playroom or in their own rooms or whatever. It's a different thing when you've got, a couple of kids, your wife, in the same hotel room, along with your pets, and you're having to deal with questions from family members about family members, et cetera.
Why are we moving? Why are we going this far away? Especially if you have young kids. So I totally understand that.
It was a distraction, and I'm not giving this team a pass, especially defensively. I think they just got whipped up front. I really do. And listen, I asked Todd Bowles about Shaq Barrett's comments about the offensive line. Shaq, is not known for giving people bulletin board material, but really at the end of the day, he did. And even Patrick Mahomes acknowledged that. And if you're a Kansas City Chiefs offensive lineman and you hear Shaq Barrett and you see, because the video was on social media, him kind of scoffing and laughing a little bit, right? You're going to get fired up about that. You're going to look for any piece of bulletin board material, of hype content to get you going. And plain and simple, the Buccaneers got whipped up front. It wasn't so much about missed tackles. Sure, there's some of those. There's missed tackles in every game, folks. This was a hat on a hat, and the Chiefs offensive line winning the line of scrimmage, winning in the trenches, and the Bucs defensive line was neutralized. You saw that at halftime. only out of all of the defensive linemen, not including the outside linebackers, but I'm talking about the defensive tackles, Logan Hall, Vita, Will Golston, Rakeem Nunez-Roches, Deidrin Sanat. Out of those 5 guys, 1 tackle.
Yeah.
And you look at the second level, Lavonte David had 7 tackles. Mike Edwards, the safety, had 7 tackles. Devin White had 6. It's not fair to always scout the box score, but in this instance, with converting 8 out of 9 third downs in the first half, this was spot on. This was the Chiefs getting to the second level with their running backs, whether it was Pacheco or whether it was Slide over Hilaire.
What frustrated me the most, besides the fact that they allowed, 180 plus yards on the ground, I mean, and that starts with the line of scrimmage. And what's scary is the fact that, Vita just got the new contract. He's a captain this year for the first time in his career. He's a captain on this team. A lot of people have a lot of expectations of him because, when Ndamukong Suh's not here and, he's another year into the system, Vita wasn't really found like anywhere, in this game. And I think it's really frustrating because that's been a couple of games now. His highlight play was when he was in coverage and forced the fumble against Aaron Jones.
Right.
And the past week, what really frustrated me more than anything else is you look at when the Chiefs were on the goal line or, a short yardage situation, you had 3 or 4 Buccaneers defenders, Scott, on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, on the backup, whoever was in the game. And still, the running back was taking 3 to 4 Bucs defenders for, 4 or 5 yards down the field. That's unacceptable. They're grinding for those extra yards. One of Edwards-Hilaire's touchdown was merely just because he willed his way into the end zone with Will Golston, with Devin White, with multiple players on him. You just can't have that. And then to put the cherry on top, when the Bucs cut it to like a 10-point game and somewhat made it close, someone gave you a prayer's chance of, okay, if you got to stop here, onside kick. You knew the Chiefs were going to run the ball, and they still rammed it down.
They just couldn't stop it.
And got 8-9 yards on first down. So then you're stupidly calling a timeout on 2nd and 1 when the 2-minute warning's about to hit, and you know that they're going to convert it because you just allowed 8 yards on the last play. That was the most frustrating for me because it's a will to win. It's a will to get the job done when you lose at the line of scrimmage when you're running the ball or trying to attack the run if you're the defense. So I really hated seeing that.
You're exactly right. Leo with the $5 super chat. We appreciate that. And in about 10 minutes, folks, it's Monday. It's not a victory Monday, as Matt said, but we're still going to do roll call where you have Pewter people. So stay tuned for that in just a couple minutes. But Leo brings up a good point here. I would gladly take the team at 2-2 now. Not concerned. The next stretch of games are favorable to us. A lot of the games up to the bye week are. Now, I will say this, and Todd Bowles was asked about this. The Atlanta Falcons, Matt, what do they do? What do they want to do? What do they do very well? They run the ball.
They run the ball.
They run the ball pretty darn good. And right now, after last night's debacle, allowing 189 yards and a couple touchdowns on the ground, the Bucs' run defense has fallen to 12th overall, allowing 106.8 yards per game. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, they're averaging 168 yards per game. Now, there is one little caveat. Cordero Patterson, who's their leading rusher, was just placed on injured reserve. He's got 340 yards rushing this year, off to a great start, averaging 5.9 yards per carry and has 3 touchdowns. So Tyler Algier, a player that I liked a lot out of BYU, will be getting a lot more carries, and he's got the longest running play in Atlanta this season so far, 42-yarder. He's got 139 yards on the ground, no touchdowns yet, but he's a big back. He's a big load, think like an A.J. Dillon type. So we'll see if the Buccaneers' run defense can get corrected, and I'm sure that will be the emphasis this week with Todd Bowles and the Bucs defense, really honing in on this because it all starts up front, and I'll talk about that in just a second when we do roll call. But Matt, I would be remiss, and Bobby here says, guaranteed quote incoming. You know who needed it, Celsius? The Bucs defense. Yeah, they sure did, Bobby. Appreciate that. That's a great segue to Celsius, which is the official energy drink of Pewter Report and the Pewter Report podcast. Now, Celsius powers active lives every day with essential functional energy and 7 vitamins. Did you know that? It's a healthy energy drink. And we're featuring right now the Vibes, right? The Arctic Vibe, which is the newest flavor. It's fantastic. Tropical Vibe has been a mainstay in the Reynolds fridge for quite some time. I actually had a peach vibe this morning, Matt, just to mix it up. A great flavor. You can get tons of flavors at Celsius. They have everything from orange, which is one of my favorites. Ashley's favorite is watermelon. They've got also a peach mango green tea. So if you don't like the sparkling flavors, try that. I had a cola flavored last night at the stadium because I needed to double up on Celsius. It was a late night. And also cucumber lime is also a good afternoon drink when I don't want that kind of fruity flavor after I've had one in the morning. So make sure that you are making Celsius part of your active lives. And I've used Celsius to replace coffee in my household. Visit Celsius.com, click on the store locator to find out where you can grab Celsius near you. You can also buy them in bulk on Amazon with the subscribe and save option, have them shipped right to your door and save lots of money. So yes, Matt, I do think that the Bucs needed some Celsius on defense. But one of the things too that I took away from this, and it's kind of funny how Buccaneer fans, I'm not saying they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth, but on one hand, they're like, we couldn't stop the run. This run defense is terrible. Oh my gosh, the run. And the second hand, they're like, what's wrong with the running game? Why are we running on first down? Why don't we just throw the ball all the time with Brady and Evans and Chris Godwin? And Matt, they kind of had to last night because that's the only thing that was really working. I thought Cade Otton did not block well. He had 2 poor blocks that led to negative yards, and that really kind of stymied things from the get-go. But I'll say this. This is why the running game is important. And Jamel Dean, when I talked to him after the game, that's one of the things that he said is that the running game, there's a real importance to trying to stop it, because if you can't make a team one-dimensional, then you have a two-dimensional team that can throw the ball or run the ball whenever they want to do that. It just makes it harder to defend. And that's what the Buccaneers want to do. The problem, Matt, is just that they're not doing it, right? They're not able to do that. And I'm not saying this is all on the tight ends, but Cameron Brate is not a good blocker. Cade Otton did not have a great night blocking. I thought he was better as a receiver, obviously. But this team really misses Rob Gronkowski. It's just apparent.
Yeah, they really miss Gronk, I think, more than anything else, because, as Gronk said himself, was a blocking tight end, baby, for the beginning of his tenure with the Bucs. And yeah, it is interesting because we do get on Byron Leftwich's case because he runs the ball at the wrong time. 1st and 20 at a shotgun. No, don't run it there. Maybe throw it on first down and then run it on second down. But we're not saying completely abandon the run. And, obviously the score dictated what Tampa Bay needed to do in that game. When you go down 21-3 and just the way the defense was playing with Mahomes, moving the ball down the field at ease, you knew you had to score quickly and hope to hold on to your level. With that said, I mean, -3 yards in the first half is absolutely unacceptable. Yeah. And I understand the Bucs finally did the right thing of mixing in Rachaad White, but Rachaad White had the same amount of rushing attempts as Leonard Fournette. That should not happen. And now they were both factors in the in the passing game, of course. But you mentioned the tight ends; they don't really have a true blocking one except for Cole Keith, and he's still a little undersized compared to Otton and Brate. And some people are calling for Kyle Rudolph, and I'm just like, he's past his prime. He's here in case someone else gets hurt. But you had talked about that they got to start, whether it's using Brandon Walton, which they did, in the goal line, just bringing in that extra offensive lineman in the run game. They have to fix something because it's not week 1 anymore. And we were all high and mighty on the run game after they did it against Dallas, but they haven't done it since then. It's been really, really tough sledding in the meantime, the past 3 weeks. I think the tight end is part of it. I think Luke Gedeke has been, I don't want to say beaten like a drum, but, D linemen are playing playing the hits against him.
Right. And to be fair to Luke Gedeke, he's gone up against 2 really good defensive linemen, right? He went up against Chris Jones on several occasions last night and got beat. And the week before that, it was Kenny Clark, right? He's a very good defensive tackle for the Green Bay Packers. But when you're a second-round pick, you're expected, and you're a starter, you got to go in there and block those guys. You can't sit there and say, oh, you're really good, so that's my excuse why I can't block you. No, you got to go in there and do it, man. And if you can't, then maybe Brandon Walton, you give him a look. I don't know. I'm
Mm.
not sold on Luke Gedeke yet. I'm not about to write him off. We're only 4 weeks into this. I'm not about to write off anything. I'm not even about to write off Byron Leftwich, Matt. But I will say this, and I'm starting a narrative here, and I hope he proves me wrong. But the bloom is kind of coming off the rose with Byron Leftwich, and I'll say this: if you look at the creativity and the imagination that kept the Bucs defense on their heels, right, with mixing up different run plays, and I know there's some people out there wanting Ndamukong Suh back, right? I even addressed that in the Bucs Monday mailbag today, but I don't think Ndamukong Suh is the answer, because if you looked at a lot of those running plays for the Chiefs were stretch zone runs, right? And that's where Suh was kind of exploited last year. And that's why he wasn't re-signed. And that's why they went after more athletic defensive tackles like Rakeem Hicks, who's not helping the team because he's hurt. And also Logan Hall, who, as you mentioned on that 3-yard touchdown run by Clyde Edwards-Helaire, got just driven back into the end zone by Trey Smith. And Vita was right next to him. He got driven back too. He got bodied by Creed Humphrey. Joe Tunney came along and double teamed and just blew those defensive tackles off the line. So can Ndamukong Suh help this team? Maybe in goal line defense, but on first down, when a team wants to run stretch, I think he was kind of exposed there last year. And let's face it, Ndamukong Suh is still a free agent for a reason, right? It's either no team wants him or no team wants to pay what he wants to make, right? It's one or the other. Otherwise, he'd be on a team by now.
I feel like it's the latter, and I was saying this when Casey and I were on the Pewter Game Day show with the live stream, and I said, as much as the Bucs, struggled a little bit in the run game, last season and prior seasons, when teams found a little bit of success, and it was a little bit, it wasn't great success, they would be running it more towards the outside in those situations. It wasn't always, up the gut. But that's what's scary is this year, while the Chiefs did a great job, going to the outside, the zone blocking, as you said, there are times like the Saints game, and this game as well, where, could be 3rd and short, and they're running it right in between the center and the guard and ripping off 8 to 10 yards. And that's the scary part, where maybe Ndamukong Suh could really help in that situation. But, going to the outside, I agree with you. Suh wasn't known for his speed at this point of his career. It's just a matter of, how many missed tackles did we see in yesterday's game? It's all about cleaning up a lot of the mental mistakes. I think there's a lot of mental errors out there on both sides of the ball.
And you know what? At the end of the day, it was just getting bullied. It was the Chiefs wanted it more. And I'm telling you, when you have two good teams and one team beats the hell out of the other, it's not about talent. It's about want to. It's about want to and execution. The Chiefs executed better, and they just came out and they wanted to. They seized momentum, and I talked to a couple of Buccaneer players after the game that said, listen, man, 3 plays into the game, we're down 7-0 to the Chiefs, and they're starting to roll. And the 2 guys that made that happen were Patrick Mahomes, who last time he was on the field was getting chased, ran over for his life by Bucs defense, didn't even make it into the end zone. And Travis Kelce, who was pretty much neutralized by Lavonte David. But I thought he abused Lavonte David a couple times, including that touchdown run right there where he juked him. And those 2 guys energized the Chiefs, gave them momentum right from the start, and the Bucs defense couldn't take it back all night long. We'll get to this play in just a second here. But I'll tell you this, Matt. One thing that we do love Mondays, win or lose, is finding out where our fans are listening and watching from. And we do this thing called Roll Call.
Roll Call.
Where are you at, Pewter people? So I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about Byron Leftwich. And Matt's going to put up all of your locations. So if you want to type in the chat where you're watching or listening from, and we'll find out, and we'll see how many Floridians we have. We'll find out how many Americans we have. We'll find out how many international Buck fans we have. As Matt does that, I'm just going to say this: the lack of imagination that I've seen from this offense, and I did say, I will say that I did appreciate the screen pass. I didn't have issues with the scripted plays for Byron Leftwich. I also didn't have issue with the Bucs going up tempo, especially when they needed to, down 21-3. But I think that was more on Brady than it was on Byron Leftwich. It's easy when your offense is scoring 30 points per game. And these are the tools / weapons / chess pieces that you have to play with, the toys, if you will. A Hall of Fame quarterback, a Hall of Fame tight end in Rob Gronkowski, a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Mike Evans, a Hall of Fame caliber player in Antonio Brown, a twice 1,000-yard wide receiver in Chris Godwin, who is the highest paid wide receiver on the Buccaneers at $20 million a year. 3 Pro Bowl offensive linemen in Ali Marpet, Ryan Jensen, Tristan Wirfs. A pretty good back for your system in Leonard Fournette. A top 10 left tackle in Donovan Smith. A right guard who, if that's your weakest link, got paid in free agency, in Alex Kappa. Yeah. When you have all of those pieces together, I'm going to say just about anybody can look good. It's hard to screw that up, Matt, right? Especially when the offense is given to you and say, this is my playbook, Byron. And I'm saying that, and of course, as Bruce Arians, here's my playbook, Byron. Go ahead and run this. Here are the toys you have to play with. And he looks good. And he gets credit for all of the offensive success. Bruce Arians is espousing how much credit Byron deserves. Okay, that's fine. But a play caller worth his salt is going to make use of what he has, right? And I'm looking at the Chiefs offense right now, and they got a Hall of Famer in Travis Kelce, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
They got a future Hall of Famer in Patrick Mahomes. But if you look at those weapons around Mahomes outside of that, right? I mean, Mecole Hardman, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who maybe is a fringe Pro Bowler if he keeps doing what he's doing. Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, this is an offense that's doing a lot with what I think are kind of a collection of role players. And you look at the collection of role players the Bucs have had to work with when you don't have a Rob Gronkowski, when Mike Evans is suspended, when Chris Godwin's out, right? And the Buccaneers struggled to score 12 points last week against the Packers, including not even really running the ball with much success. And you saw what the Patriots were able to do against the Packers on the ground yesterday.
Yeah.
So
the Patriots.
I just think that the bloom has come off the rose about Byron Leftwich, and I don't want that to be the case. I want him to be some kind of offensive whiz kid,
the next big thing,
the next big thing. But I don't think he is. I haven't seen that, and certainly without the weapons and the Pro Bowlers that I talked about, the point production is not there. Now they put up 31 points last night. They had to throw the ball, but at the same time, that's Tom Brady. That's Mike Evans. That's Chris Godwin doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this offense. And what concerns me is, I don't want to scare any Buccaneer fans. I know we're in the spooky season with Halloween. But Matt, if this guy's not going to be a head coach, then he's probably stuck in Tampa for another year. And if the offense is regressing without a future Hall of Famer and Rob Gronkowski and those offensive linemen, those Pro Bowlers we talked about, what's going to happen when Byron Leftwich has a Kyle Trask or a Blaine Gabbert or some other quarterback not named Tom Brady to work with? Scares the hell out of me, man.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, I never want to – I'm never going to – well, never say never. But put it this way. When Byron Leftwich was in the running for head coaching jobs last season, obviously he almost became the Jaguars head coach. A lot of us talked about, at least in the Pewter Report group chat, I don't know if he's totally deserving of to become a head coach. And, he had some things going for him. The Bucs had one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. But again, you have Tom Brady when you're running that offense, and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, everyone that you had mentioned.
Yeah.
You see it with the Chiefs. They lost Tyreek Hill, and yet Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid, they're putting their players in the best, all Byron talks about is I want to put my players in the best position to succeed.
Yeah.
Well, the Chiefs did that with way lesser talent than the Bucs had. And it's like, okay, well, if Evans is suspended and Godwin's hurt, the narrative becomes, oh, well, they don't have their star wide receiver, so that's why they can't do anything and they can't move the ball. Well, you know what? That's BS, because we see other teams,
that's right,
still be effective. And another thing that was really concerning, and I do think there were some positives from this game. We could talk about that in a little bit.
Hey, listen, I'm happy they found the end zone more than once per game. I'm happy they scored 31 points. I hope this continues. Right?
And I'm glad they're making these mistakes now it just became October, but mostly September and the first week of October. And they're not making these mistakes, in November, December. But it just felt like a time, Scott. If there was like a penalty or, a crappy run play that they lost yards, anytime they had to overcome anything that was more than 10 yards, if it was 1st and 15
it's just
or anything
impossible.
like that, it felt like they were climbing Mount Everest. It really felt that way. With the Chiefs, it was like, okay, Mahomes got sacked, 2nd and 15, wham, 17 yards, first down. How many times did we talk about you have to stop Travis Kelce? What did he do? 9 receptions, 92 yards, multiple third down plays. Like anytime you needed him, he just made the money play. So I'm going to be honest, watching that game and just talking about it now, it really just makes me want to crack open a beer. And of course, if I'm drinking a beer, it's going to be Pirate Republic, which is the official beer of PewterReport.com. They are brewed in Nassau in the Bahamas, and they're making their way to Florida for the football season. Beer brings people together to celebrate life. That means celebrating life in the spirit of the original pirate code. That's a sense of belonging. Pirate Republic is a community of people living life on their terms. The Long John Pilsner, my personal favorite, is perfect for tailgating or having fun at the beach in the Florida sun. The Take No Quarter is the best IPA that you'll drink, and drop an orange slice in the golden haze of piracy Belgian wit beer and enjoy the pirate life. Pirate Republic beer is available at participating retailers like Total Wine and more, Lucan's Liquors, Party Liquors, and select ABC liquor stores in the greater Tampa Bay area. And they're expanding across the state of Florida, so that's very exciting. Live your life on your terms and drink like a pirate. And that's with Pirate Republic beer.
Good stuff, Matt. I certainly had some Pirate Republic over the weekend. I wish I would have brought some to the game. Don't think I can drink in the press box, but I wanted to. It was so bad. Listen, I'm a defensive guy, right? And I think that this is going to be. We're going to find out which Bucs defense we've seen, right? Mm-hmm. Who's the imposter? Is the imposter last night, where this team just dealt with a week full of distractions and finally got to the game and lost momentum and got a little tired? And listen, let's say a little tired. The Chiefs almost had a 2-1 time of possession advantage.
They had 80 snaps on offense. 80 snaps. The punter only came on late in the game.
Right. Or is the defense we saw, say, in New Orleans, right? Holding the Saints to just 13 points, or I should say 10 points, 3 points against the Cowboys the first week. A defense that gets sacks in bunches, that creates takeaways, that can score on defense. We've got a small sample size, Matt. We've got 4 games. And we're entering a stretch now where there are some quote-unquote winnable games, although I put air quotes on that because this is the NFL. On any given Sunday is more applicable now than ever. It seems there's more parity in this league now than there ever has been. But, Matt, we collectively, I think, said, as long as this team does no worse than 2-2 out of the first 4 games of this juggernaut of an early month of a schedule, as long as they finish at least 2-2, they should be okay, because you have Atlanta, you got Carolina, you got Pittsburgh, etc. Coming down the pike, these are some quote-unquote winnable games. But at the same time, Matt, how does the fact that this team has now lost back-to-back games at home, how does that sit with you, the fact that it's these 2 games, not one of those other games on the road, whether it be Dallas or New Orleans?
Yeah, I think that's what really hurts, is the fact that, yes, they did reach the goal of just going 2-2, and that was a good thing. But you would almost rather them kind of, win one, lose one, win one, lose one, or in that setting. Because I know in Bruce talked about you got to win your games at home and then split on the road, and
That's right.
that's going to get you a winning record, and that's going to get you the division. And the Bucs have not gone with that blueprint so far. Now, granted, they went up against the two best quarterbacks that they're going to see this year on their schedule, but at the same time, Atlanta's coming off a win. Sure, it was the Browns, but you ride the momentum of any win. The Bucs lost 2 in a row.
Yeah.
And it almost does help that this game is back in Tampa, because I think you have to get that monkey off your back a little bit. Not that historically
you got to get a home win.
Yeah, you have to get a home win. Start riding that momentum, because I really think, and I watched a lot of the Jets Steelers. I watched all of it. I watched all of the Jets Steelers game. That Steelers team, their defense is okay, especially when TJ Watt is in there. But Minka Fitzpatrick, their other star defensive player, he got hurt. We'll see what happens in a couple of weeks. But that's a team. If the Jets can score 24 points against the Steelers, Tom Brady and the Bucs can match that and get, if not even more. Kenny Pickett only played a half and threw 3 interceptions. So that's a game. That's a get right game for the Bucs.
I certainly hope that's the case.
And the Panthers have been an absolute dumpster fire. So
they have.
But this is a huge test this week against the Falcons, Scott.
But you know what? We saw Aaron Rodgers make a couple of those Houdini type plays, right, where he's almost sacked and it does an underhand toss or just zips the ball right past a blitzing linebacker to to Robert Tonyan at the tight end, or Aaron Jones to pick up a key first down on third down. And of course, Patrick Mahomes does that better than anybody now. This is a real play. This is Patrick Mahomes. His knee is not down. This is Carlton Davis.
That was unbelievable.
Right?
How the heck did that happen?
Should have had a sack. This is Shaq Barrett, who's applying pressure to, almost batted the pass down. And this is on third down, folks. This should be a sack. And I kind of talked about this in the Pewter Report group chat here. There's people out there that say pressures are even better than sacks, blah, blah, blah. No, they're not. No, they're not. Pressures are important. I'm not diminishing the importance of pressures, because if you can't get a sack, you want to get a pressure. And sometimes pressures can lead to interceptions, right? That's something that can happen. But this is a great example of how pressures can be misleading, and not all pressures are created equal. Okay, this is a pressure by Carlton Davis. This is a pressure on the same play by Shaq Barrett. This is also a completion on third down to Juju Smith-Schuster. Okay, so it's indicative of the magician that Patrick Mahomes is, and certainly was last night. And here's another play too that I don't want to give any Buccaneer fans nightmares. Again, it's kind of spooky season. We're into October now, but this was a pressure by Devin White. Should have been a sack by Devin White. A sack would have been better on this play than a pressure, just like Carlton Davis's sack would have been better than a pressure on that play. But this is Devin White coming in 100 miles an hour. Patrick Mahomes sees him, slams the brakes on, sidesteps him.
Spin move too.
Yeah, he's pressured, but still makes a remarkable touchdown pass, and there you go. So.
And friend of the program, Pat O'Connor, almost had Mahomes on the same play. He was initially the defensive lineman that got in there, and then
He's
Mahomes
right
rolled out to his right.
Yeah,
rolled out to his right, and then Devin White missed on the spin move. Shout out Frank. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Yesterday, when they showed the replay of Mahomes doing the spin move on Devin White, I did the Chris Berman, whoop! When he does that move, and Frank was a big fan of it, so he just asked for it there. I gave it to you. Whoop! So thank you, Frank, for the super chat. Ask and you shall receive.
Yep. I did have we put up a super chat there about Christopher Oxendine. We appreciate that. I did have a question here from Mark Fisher. He says, Scott, it is clear that though that Bowles is not on the same level as BA. Time to mentor. Can donate to the chat or to the site as always. Appreciate that question, Mark. I will say this. It's 4 games. It's too early to make snap judgments about anything. We have to analyze what's happening, but just like I'm not about to condemn Byron Leftwich, I can say what's on my mind right now through 4 games. And if you don't think Todd Bowles is up to snuff through 4 games, time will tell. I will say this, usually, and I've covered enough coaching turnover in Tampa, Matt, whether it was ultimately Tony Dungy at one point, whether it was ultimately John Gruden at another, whether it was ultimately Raheem Morris after 3 years, Greg Schiano after 2, Lovie Smith after 2, Dirk Cutter after 3, right? I mean, I've seen enough turnover to know usually you have to kind of lose the locker room. You have to kind of go in the downward spiral to get the coaching change. Now, I don't think Mark's calling for coaching change. He's saying, is it time for Bowles to be mentored by Bruce? Well, Bruce is in the building.
Yeah, he's there.
He's
they
there.
have conversations.
They have conversations all the time. At the same time, Todd Bowles, he's the head coach. He has to figure things out. I mentioned this on the postgame podcast last night. It bears repeating for those of you that didn't listen or watch. I asked Tristan Wirfs, I said, what did Todd Bowles tell this team after the game? And he said, well, he walked in. The first thing he said was, guys, this is on me. This is my loss. Sorry, I let you guys down. And all of a sudden, Mike Evans, offensive player, right? Pro Bowl wide receiver, not a defensive player, wide receiver, team captain, steps up and said, no, coach, it's on us. It's on us as players, right? And again, this is an offensive player. They scored 31 points, Matt. I mean, it wasn't all pretty, and they could have used some of those in the first quarter to kind of neutralize things. They're always chasing that scoreboard. Always, as soon as they would pull within 10, it seemed like Kansas City would get a field goal or touchdown to just extend that lead. But I still think that speaks volumes about Mike Evans to quickly cut off Todd Bowles and say, no, coach, this is not on you. This is on us as the players. Todd Bowles was also taking the brunt of the blame during his post-game press conference. He should, right? I'm not trying to say he doesn't deserve blame. He does. He and the coaching staff and the players do. This was an all-around,
it was a group effort,
crappy loss by this team.
And, that's why Mike Evans is who he is. That's why he's a team captain. And you know what? Mike Evans did his part, over 100 receiving yards. Once again, proved why him and Tom Brady are maybe the most threatening duo in the red zone, connecting. One was a fade pass. And, of course, he had the one where he got hit pretty hard, too. He got hit really hard in that game. The 30-yard reception that he made, he got hit in the back. He got hit pretty hard on that first touchdown. And then he drew that unnecessary roughness penalty as well. So Mike Evans, a good thing he got a good week of rest last week when he was suspended, because I'm sure he's feeling pretty brutal today.
And Tom Brady, said that he needs some TB12 treatment on his right shoulder after getting sacked by L'Jarius Sneed, who, if you read the SR's Fab Five and watched the Pewter Report tailgate show, this Sneed guy he means business in the slot. He's a good slot cornerback, had some good moments in coverage, but certainly had a huge sack fumble in that game that really stole possession from the Buccaneers. And not just that, but also, stole some momentum as Tampa Bay was trying to creep back into the game. To have that, that sack fumble happen was not good. You see Luke Gedeke here had a rough night blocking. Chris Jones, who recovered that fumble by Sneed, but he wasn't the only player. Tom Brady wasn't the only player got hurt. Carlton Davis got banged up. We did not really get an injury update, I don't think. Did we, Matt?
Yeah, Bowles just said. So what Bowles said was that he said Carlton Davis is okay. So Carlton should be good to go for next week's game against the Falcons. They said they're still evaluating Logan Ryan, which obviously is a bit more concerning. And then he was asked again about Julio Jones. Now, Julio, remember, we were all excited because their big three receivers were coming back. Evans from suspension and Godwin and Jones from their injury, since they haven't played since week 1. And Julio was pretty much nowhere to be found. 2 targets, 1 reception for 7 yards. Granted, it was on a 3rd down, and he got the 1st down. So at least he did that.
I don't even know.
Sorry. Bowles said after the game that he couldn't get loose at halftime and wasn't able to play in the second half. So that's why they didn't, that's why they didn't use him in the second half. I think it's going to be an ongoing problem for the entire season.
I think, I think there's some fool's gold here, right? I mean, he looked good in training camp. He had some days. They rested him. They tried to be precautionary. I just think his body's giving out, man. He's 33. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to see him come back and be a factor at some point in time. Maybe a couple 100-yard games would be nice down the stretch. I don't know, man, but I'm with you. I don't have a good feeling about Julio Jones. I think the Fantastic Four is really just the dynamic duo, man. I mean, Russell Gage no separation in this game. What do you have? One catch, two catches?
2 catches for 24 yards.
Yeah.
And got hurt, got banged up in the game.
He's got a bad hamstring that I don't see healing for some time. That's been bothering some training camp. He's averaging about 7 yards per catch. This is a $10 million receiver here that I know he's banged up, but man, it's the Fantastic Four is no more. This is the dynamic duo. And then you don't have Gronk. Obviously, we talked about that. And Cam Brate is a big step down. And now you're going to be without Cam Brate, who is in the concussion protocol. Todd Bowles talked about that. I put that story up on pewterreport.com before the podcast, where it looked like a concussion to me because that was a pretty wicked collision between he and Chris Godwin, a little friendly fire there. But he ran into Godwin and looked like he was concussed, but then came over to the sidelines, and Bowles said he was complaining about his shoulder. And so they evaluated him for the shoulder. He went back in. I mean, he only played another minute and a half of game time. And then the symptoms came on at halftime, and then they put him in the concussion protocol. He didn't play in the second half of the game. But Kyle Rudolph now, who neither one are you and I are too impressed with, he's going to be active for this game along with Cade Otton and O'Keefe. So, again, nothing we can do about Rob Gronkowski until he decides to, if he wants to, come back. But it's fair to say that right now, this Buccaneer offense could use an Ali Marpet, who he's not coming back because Luke Gedeke has not been the answer at left guard, not even close. And I think he's been the obvious weak link on that offensive line. Yeah. And then you've got the tight end position that is just young and not good right now.
Shout out to Matthew for the $5 super chat. He says, O-line improving, but run blocking sucks. Our O-line used to get extra yards after contact with pile push led by Jensen. Where's the O-line dog to step up? Yeah, it's still a work in progress. And as Scott just, laid out, it's been really tough with Luke Gedeke. And, Shaq Mason, again, is new to this team. He's obviously a high caliber player. Right. And let's remember, Hainsey, it's his first time starting too. He's only a second year player. So to expect the same in there, it's not a wise move. But with that said, they still have to be better. They don't have to be as good as Ryan Jensen and Ali and Donovan Smith fully healthy in there. But you can't do -3 yards in the first half.
No,
6 rushing attempts, and there has to be some sort of movement.
And you know what, Matt? I think Byron Leftwich, we saw down there by the goal line. He went with the extra offensive lineman. We saw that with Joe Haig several times during the Bucs Super Bowl run, bringing in that jumbo tight end when Anthony Altlair was injured. He was their blocking tight end. And I think they're going to have to revert back to that. Brandon Walton was the player that came in. I'm all for it. Listen, you're predictable as it is running the ball, okay? So if you want to just obviously tell the defense what you're going to do and bring in your blocking tight end who's really an offensive lineman like Brandon Walton, if that's going to get the job done, then do it. If you want to run the ball, then just say, hey, we're going to run the ball. We're going to bring in the jumbo offensive lineman, use him as the tight end, and see if we can do something. Because right now, it's still pretty apparent when you're going to run the ball based upon your formations. I mean, they're not having any success doing it with O'Keefe and Cade Otton and Cam Brate. So you might as well, if you're going to be predictable, just go ahead and be predictable and just say, screw it. We're bringing in Brandon Walton. He's going to be the Joe Haig this year. We're going to try to run the ball that way. You know what? You want to test Brandon Walton's hands down there by the goal line like you did Joe Haig in the Super Bowl? Maybe he catches the ball. We'll see. But at this point, I give Leftwich some credit for at least going to that near the goal line. Just go ahead and do it now because I just haven't seen enough from the tight ends. I think they're really hurting the running game. It hasn't been clean all the way across the board either with Gedeke and Hainsey. They're 2 young players, but just go ahead and do it at this point in time.
It's clear that they're not getting the job done. The Bucs just aren't. Yeah. But one thing that does get the job done for you, especially if you're getting up there in age, is age rejuvenation.
As we age, our hormones decrease, both for men and women.
I was tired all the time, had no sex drive.
I was groggy.
I felt like I was 80 years old because everything hurt.
I came to age rejuvenation because I was tired all the time.
Bioidentical hormones has really made such an impact in people's lives.
I actually enjoy shopping now.
Got all my energy back.
Mind is sharp.
I feel like I'm 18 again.
It was perfect for me.
Get with Age Rejuvenation. Do it now. Don't wait.
Call Age Rejuvenation today.
Age Rejuvenation. Well, listen, I'm going to say a couple things about that commercial. I like the commercial, but I don't know that I believe the lady, right? When she says, I feel like shopping now. No, women like to shop all the time. This has nothing to do with how old you feel. And 80, wow, that's a stretch. I mean, listen, I'm 50, right? I was feeling 50, maybe even 55 or something before I became an Age Rejuvenation client. And I don't feel like I'm 18 again, but I feel like I'm in my late 30s again. I do feel like the time has been turned back a little bit. And guys, if you want to feel better, go to Age Rejuvenation. You can lose weight. I've dropped a couple pounds, feel great, have better sex. You might have seen Age Rejuvenation as my new sponsor of the SR's Fab 5 column on pewterreport.com, and also as the presenting sponsor of the Celsius Pewter Report tailgate show at walk-ons on a weekly basis. Well, I'm a new Age Rejuvenation customer, and thankfully, don't have any issues in the bedroom, but I turned 50 this year, and energy has become a problem. It turns out I've got low testosterone, like most men in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. It's just nature. It happens. There's not much you can do about it unless you go to Age Rejuvenation. Low testosterone can affect everything from weight loss to energy to stamina. And right now, there's a way to fight it, and that's what I did with the testosterone therapy treatments. I've got more energy. Visit agerejuvenation.com. Don't wait. If you're feeling lousy, if you're tired all the time, there's a way to fight it, guys. Age Rejuvenation with 5 Tampa Bay area locations to serve you. It certainly worked wonders for me so far. It's worked wonders for John Gilmore, former Buccaneer tight end. Lose weight, feel great. Age Rejuvenation.
Yeah, shout out to John Gilmore. Did a great job with JC and Bailey, as he does every week on the Celsius Pewter Report tailgate show presented by Age Rejuvenation and live from walk-ons. It was at Midtown. It'll be at the Midtown location again this week for it's a 1:00 game, so we'll start at 11:00 from the walk-ons in Midtown. Definitely recommend you go and check that out if you haven't already. I've been there multiple times. Especially go tomorrow because they have happy hour all day, and you can't beat that deal. So.
Yeah, Tuesday at walk-ons, that's my jam. You'll usually see Ashley and I there on Tuesdays up at the Wesley Chapel location. Long Lost Leisure says Scott hasn't had a haircut since BA retired. Next advertiser will be Sports Clips. I'm open to that, Sports Clips. If you want to do a sponsorship on the Pewter Report podcast, happy to entertain that. Happy to get some free haircuts too. Don't think I necessarily need one right now. I'm kind of liking the long lock.
Good flow.
I did receive some troubling news, Matt, at the stadium. I was not able to confirm this, and I should have had our intrepid photographer Cliff Welch take a picture, but we do have some information that it was disturbing to me during the game, and somebody mentioned my hair and also my affection for Blaine Gabbert and his flowing locks. There is word that Blaine Gabbert got a haircut. And I'm not saying that's why the Buccaneers lost, Matt, but it's freaking me out a little bit. And I haven't seen any photographic evidence of it yet, but it's concerning. I mean,
so they showed him, after Brady got hit and obviously he was holding his shoulder.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a second. Like, Blaine Gabbert has flow. He was wearing a hat. You would still see the locks coming down. I was like, wait a second. Did Blaine get a haircut? And then, we went on with the conversation, so I kind of forgot about it, but damn, that's not a good sign. And we don't know exactly when. Maybe he cut it this week after they lost to the Packers. Because I was thinking the same thing. I need to trim my beard a little bit, but I was like, the Bucs are 2-0. I can't do anything until they lose.
Samson. Just saying.
I was thinking Samson from Half Baked. I want to talk to Samson. Some people might know that.
I think Harvin is talking about Samson from the Holy Word, but well, yeah. I mean, I think Samson, Delilah. She came in and cut his hair. So I don't know. I'm just saying. Gabbert got a haircut because he's going to have an actual job interview.
Long Lost Glazer always has a lot of great chats and comments in there. So Harvner had another question. I think he said, "Is there anyone out there that we can sign?" I don't see the comment, but I remember seeing it. A couple minutes ago. I don't really think. I mean, defensive line. Obviously, Sue is out there, but we already kind of talked about why you might not want that. And everyone on offense is going to say Odell Beckham. Well, Odell Beckham's not healthy either.
Yeah.
So you have to wait until November to.
Yeah, we can start an Odell Beckham watch, Matt. We can do that. It's just going to take a minute, right? We're premature. We're probably 5 weeks away from really entertaining Odell Beckham in terms of a viable signing, are we not?
Right. And then a lot of people are saying Julian Edelman as well. I mean, people still talk about getting Gronk back. Edelman's been retired for like a couple of seasons now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if like all of a sudden he wants to come out of retirement. He's got a pretty good job, I think, with CBS Sports. So I don't know. He's doing pretty well for himself.
All right. So Julian Edelman is 36 years old. Okay. So, so Matt, how's that 33-year-old wide receiver Julio Jones doing for this Buccaneer team? How's the 33-year-old wide receiver Cole Beasley doing for this Buccaneer team?
He fell tripping on himself.
Right. I'm just saying, if anything, this Buccaneer team needs a little bit of a youth movement next year, not so much the old guys, because the old guys they've signed, Kyle Rudolph, Akeem Hicks, Julio Jones, Cole Beasley.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately,
not a good track record so far.
The Bucs took a gamble with some guys that are a little bit injury prone with these veteran additions, and right now they're losing on those gambles. You know, obviously Hicks has been hurt the last 2 weeks. Jones, we've discussed that a ton. Beasley here, so you know he played 9 snaps last week. He hasn't really been a huge factor. Made a nice, catch on 4th down last week against the Packers, but he didn't do anything in last week's game when he only played 9 snaps. So, you know, you took a gamble on a couple of these guys. Rudolph was only active when Otten wasn't available. So, you know, sometimes you're not going to hit on every single, you know, free agent signings that you have. So if you can't love Jason Light in the front office on a Kyle Rudolph signing, then you don't deserve him when he signed Shaq Barrett. All right. So
no general manager is perfect. Jason will be the first one to tell you that. That's for sure. One thing that is pretty darn close to perfect, if I do say so ourselves, is our coverage at Pewter Report. We feel like we do a pretty good job covering this team. We've been doing it for a couple of years now, Matt. We've been doing it for a while. We kind of know what we're talking about. We have some good contacts and good analysis. Make sure that if you like the Pewter Report podcast, that you are checking out pewterreport.com. We got plenty of stories up today, more coming up tonight, including my 2-point conversion post-game column. Best Bucs coverage. And you be sure to follow us on our social media accounts, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Pewter Report, and on YouTube, Pewter Report TV, where we are approaching 10,000 subscribers. So, Matt, we appreciate every single one of those subscribers.
Yes, we do.
And what can they do when they go to Pewter Report TV, aside from hitting the subscribe button?
Hit those thumbs up, hit those likes as well. It really helps us with our algorithm. If you like a lot of the videos that we put out, obviously we have the Pewter Report podcast and the Tailgate Show and the Game Day Show. But, you know, we like to put out different videos as well, whether it's good sound bites from coaches and players. We had a video up earlier today about, you know, Todd Bowles and Tom Brady talking post game. We've done on this day in Bucs history. We have some stuff from practice. So a little bit of everything for everyone. So, yeah, do us a favor, hit that like button and, you know, help us with that algorithm. Let more people know about pewterreport.com and Pewter Report TV. So if you like it, just do us a quick favor.
Greatly appreciate that. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad the hurricane's gone. I mean, that was a big distraction for everybody, not just the Buccaneers and you know, people, I guess, live in the Tampa Bay area, but also all of Florida too. I mean, that the devastation in Southwest Florida is just, it's unbelievable. And it, you know, you feel a little guilty sometimes saying, well, I'm glad it didn't hit here, but you know, the reality of it is, yeah, I've got some curtains, Matt, and privacy and shade are two of the reasons why I wanted to get my curtains from Florida Lanai Curtains. And, you know, I thought for sure we had some really windy gusts in Wesley Chapel, and I was unsure if I was going to still have a lanai, and I was unsure if the curtains from Florida Lanai Curtains were still going to hold up through 60, 70 mile per hour gusts. But they did. They came through like nobody's business. Everything's intact. And it speaks to the quality that Florida Lanai Curtains uses. You know, we live in Florida because of the warm weather. And the two most common complaints about living in Florida are, the heat, right? It's the brutal heat of the summer months, finally starting to cool up a little bit here in October, but it's still going to be in the 80s for quite some time. And the other thing is there's just so much new construction down here. You have houses that are built almost on top of each other. Lack of privacy and too much sun can drive people inside and away from their backyards, their screened enclosed pools, etc. And that's where Florida Lanai Curtains comes in, solving both these problems with their privacy on demand patented outdoor privacy curtain system and their custom made enclosure shade sails. Their flexible installation options, high quality products give you privacy and shade just where you need them. Privacy on demand outdoor curtains are made from the well-known Sunbrella brand of material that's marine canvas quality, and it's backed by a 10-year fade-free warranty and available in over 100 colors. It's going to enhance the look and comfort of any outdoor space and match the back of your house. The unique shade sails are made from the Sola Mesh fabric, which has a 10-year warranty against degradation and are built to give you the shade and UV protection for years to come. So if you need privacy or shade or both, and you want more freedom to enjoy your outdoor spaces, your screened-in porch, your lanai with your pool cage, visit Florida Lanai Curtains website at lanaiCurtains.com. It's a great investment. They look great, and they give you the privacy and the shade that you want. Go to lanaiCurtains.com, find out more about their amazing custom products, and do your own hassle-free instant online estimate. Call 813-337-2511 to schedule a free in-home consultation. That's Florida Lanai Curtains at lanaiCurtains.com.
Make sure you check that out. And, as we wrap things up here, again, thank you to everyone watching and listening. And I just want to say, I understand people are frustrated right now. The Bucs have lost 2 in a row, and especially that Packers game was a very winnable game, without question. But the sky isn't falling just yet.
I agree.
The defense had a bad game, a truly awful game, and it started with the fumble. It took the air right out of the stadium. I think that really messed things up a lot. But this team is 2-2. The defense improved in the passing game. They're a way better team when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are available, and hopefully they're good to go for next week. Thank you, Gary. This was our best podcast.
Yeah, I think it was.
And,
felt pretty good about it,
2-2.
And it's confirmed.
Yeah, they're 2-2. They're fighting for the top of the NFC South. There's only 2 undefeated teams remaining in the NFL. The Eagles have 4-0, and the Jets, who are undefeated when Zach Wilson is their starting quarterback. So there's only 2 undefeated teams remaining in the league. So that means there's a lot of other teams that have 1 and 2 losses. And like I said earlier, the Bucs are making these mistakes now. They're making it in the first 4 or 5 games of the season. They're not doing this, hopefully, in December and January. What is Nate saying here?
Oh, man.
I saw someone with a comment like that. I'm not saying that you didn't come up with it, Nate, but yeah, it was a tough week for the U.
That's a good burn. Yeah. And listen, after my tongue lashing from Ryan Griffin when his Tulane Green Wave beat my Kansas State Wildcats in Manhattan a couple weeks ago, my Wildcats got their act together, Matt. They beat Oklahoma on the road, which is
they did.
Just what we do. I mean, it's just what Kansas State does. And then also a nice win over Texas Tech. We're in the top 20, so things are looking up for us. I think they're going to be looking up for the Buccaneers too. This is going to be a big Falcons game. We're going to get into this on Wednesday when we do our Falcons Bucs preview, Matt, at 4:00 Eastern time. We want everybody there for that particular show because this is another divisional game. And a lot's at stake. The Buccaneers can snap this 2-game losing streak, get a win at home, and more importantly, Matt, get 2-0 in the division.
Yes. Tiebreakers are extremely important. Extremely, extremely important. And everyone likes when you win in the division. So that's going to do it for today's episode. We'll be back on Wednesday at 4 p.m. So for Scott Reynolds, I'm Matt Matera saying thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you on Wednesday for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.